Right. I think the waiting time is over. If someone else is joining, that's fine. We'll just begin now. But yeah, as I was saying earlier, this week's webinar is about the strengthening of your month-end closing processes. My name is Jenna Rasmussen, and I'm a business development director at Impero. And with me today, I have Morten, who's our head of customer success. So Morten, do you just quickly want to introduce yourself and tell us about who you are?
Yeah, so in very brief, as Shanna mentioned, I am heading our customer success and customer support department. So on a regular basis, I am supporting all of our clients, all of our partners in Impero. So I know all the little corners, all the little details there's to know about Impero.
Brilliant. And to give a brief introduction to myself, as I was saying, I'm a business development director. My focus is on expanding the existing and the new markets in Denmark and internationally. I have a background from professional services industry where I had a heavy focus and interest within the design and optimization of processes and internal controls. So I bring first-hand experience from a number of different angles within the month-end closing processes. So that's both from an operational perspective, where I was a finance accountant being responsible for the month-end closing processes and operation of the controls for 3 entities within a Danish listed company. I have my advisory background, where I've been advising dozens and dozens of Danish and international clients as to how they optimize and simplify their processes and controls. And likewise, I've been an auditor for just about 4 years, where I was the one auditing these processes and controls and providing recommendations as to how you can basically optimize and improve it. And throughout my experience with these closing processes in each of the different capacities, I've always experienced that this is an area where companies are able to greatly benefit from actually plugging some power into these processes and have it being underpinned by technology. So that's why we thought today would be a very good idea to have a topic like strengthening your month-end processes. So if we go to our agenda for the day, we are going to talk you through how basically Impero can help you underpin your month-end closing processes. So how you can automate your programs and processes, how you can effectively design and embed your tasks and controls into your day-to-day work. We're also going to talk about how you can monitor that these tasks are in fact operated as intended in a timely manner. And we're also going to touch upon how you can assign user groups, how you can reassign controls to avoid bottlenecks and ensure that these controls are performed, even though that some employees may be out of office for one reason or the other. So throughout the webinar, you have the opportunity to be asking questions, and if it makes sense, we're gonna answer them throughout the webinar, and if not, then we're holding space at the end of the webinar to answer any questions. And then at the end, we're gonna talk a bit about some of our resources. What are the upcoming webinars? What are some of the webinars we've already had and that you're able to find on our website? So I can imagine that everyone listening on this webinar today has firsthand experience themselves with the closing processes. Many of you may associate this time of the month, the quarter, the year with an extra level of stress. Tasks need to be performed efficiently, they need to be performed in a timely manner in order for basically everything to fall into place before the required reporting deadlines. You may have experienced that some of your colleagues are out of office due to illness or vacation. Potentially some tasks are falling between 2 stools as a result of that. Or you may even experience that either yourself or one of your colleagues is the constant bottleneck that is preventing the closing process from running smoothly. Some of you today may even be part of middle management, upper management, maybe even the board or the investors, who has a really key interest to be able to trust the reported numbers and figures, because they essentially serve as the foundation for your further decision making. So there's a few different angles here, a few different areas of interest why you might be attending this webinar today. But basically what we're gonna spend the next 30 to 40 minutes on is showcasing how you can leverage our easy to use platform with automated workflows to basically build an effective and efficient closing process. So for those of you who briefly know about Impero, we'll primarily be zooming into the control management and the reporting modules, where we'll be presenting solutions to the typical challenges that we see that the companies are exposed to. We'll also be zooming in just slightly into the user management module. And please, by all means, ask any questions if it doesn't make sense. Or if you need a better understanding. So, Morten, I'm new to Impero. I'm responsible for the financial reporting at my company. I know that me and my team have a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. We got a list of to-do lists. I know that group accounting is doing one thing. I know that group reporting is doing another thing. And also I have to remember to ask procurement every once in a while whether we've entered into new contracts. But I simply just lost the overview. I don't understand. I can't remember what needs to be done. So how can Impero help us getting this end-to-end understanding and this easy overview in order for us to basically efficiently close our books and report on our numbers? Can you tell us a bit about how Impero can help us set up this simple overview?
Yeah, I'll do that, and as we have done previously as well, I'll kick things off here and at the login page, and as you also mentioned, Janne will mainly be focusing around the control and reporting sections of Impero for today, and we will also, at least for the majority of this webinar here, we will be what we call the task and control, risk and control, managers, which means that we will essentially be working within the system from a bit like an admin, from an admin point of view. But I'll let you know when we swap a bit back and forth between these roles here. So what I'll do here is that I'll sign in using my username and password. There's a bit of content here already in place, but what we'll focus on today is mainly within the financial control program. So how to actually structure like a month-end close process. So essentially there's two ways of doing that in Impero, and we'll just start a bit about, well, how are we actually addressing this in Impero? We'll do that by just doing one example here of a control that runs within Impero. We'll just cover the very basics of how to actually modify it, how to actually structure it, how to actually make sure that we get the feedback that we actually need, and it reaches the right persons. So all this is something that, well, we need to do once. We need to set up all these controls here in order to get the overview that you are also talking about here, Janne. So what we'll do is that we'll just pick out one control, just be a basic bank reconciliation here for the sake of this example, but all controls in Impero essentially follows this same structure here. So when we are designing a control or task here in Impero, it consists of a name and a description. So there's room for a lot more text than what I did here in this example here. But this is essentially the very basic. So there's a name, there's a description, and then we essentially use something that we call tags, which is like small stamps that we can put on each of these controls here, so we can later find them for reporting purposes. We'll get a lot more back to this at a later stage as well. We'll not be covering all the sections here on this page here. We'll do that in a later webinar as well. But I'll just very briefly explain these 4 sections here. So we have the basic details, we have the scheduling. So when is this control actually supposed to be submitted by? So maybe you are doing like a hard close on business day 6, and we would like the control to be available on the first day of each month. Again, this is something we set up once. So well, now we will run each control will be sent on the first day of the month, and it will have to be submitted no later than on the 6th business day of the month. So in this example here, it will be sent out here July 1st. It will have the due date of the 8th of July, and we also stamp it with a period, again for reporting purposes, so we know that well, this is actually regarding June data. Again, we are now in an admin view. This is something that we do once, and then it will automatically each month send this control and make it available for the ones we have here in the assignment section here. So this could be an individual user, this could be me. It could also be that maybe we work a bit more in a group. So it could be that well, we actually have an accounting team, for instance, that we would want to make this control available for. But it's we only wanted to submit a result once. So essentially we make it available for everyone, but only one of the members of this user group would actually have to submit an answer. So in short, no matter if you like have individual responsibilities on each of these controls and tasks, or if you do your month-end closing process within different teams, that could be well, teams you have internally at your company. Maybe you use a shared service center for this. Well, then we can actually do this using these user groups here. We'll get a lot more back to this at a later point. The final thing that we want to address is essentially the design of these tasks here. And as you can see, this is completely flexible. We haven't done anything for now here, but it could be that well, we have just a regular confirm button where you could say, well, please confirm that we have submitted the control on time, that we have completed the control on time. I'll just do like this here in the example. As you can see, it's very easy to do this. Again, these instructions can of course be very precise depending on what you actually need. We have the ability here to actually attach a file. So this means that we can actually upload an Excel template or some general guidelines or something like that. And then we decide, well, what should the ones submitting this control be able to answer. So in this case, they can answer either yes or no. We can say, well, it's actually required, so they can't actually submit their control without having answered one of these 2 items here. And then maybe we actually want some documentation here in return, but we actually only want this if they up here in the confirm button here answered yes. And again, we can make this required because well, if they answer no, well then we actually won't display or give the ability to actually attach some documentation. Then we can do like an optional comment field here in the end. So this is actually very brief, very simple how to structure like a basic control in Impero. I'll just do a preview here for now. So as you can see, we have the title, we have the overall description, we have all of our tags here. So I can see that this is regarding the cash management process. It's a key control. We do this every month. It's manual and detective. When I click here and I say, well, yeah, I have done whatever I'm supposed to, I can upload some documentation. I can that's actually especially around the month-end closing process. This is a little neat feature. So of course you can browse using a regular file share. We can also drag and drop files into this specific area here, but we can actually also use either print screen on your keyboard or this little snipping tool that we have down here to actually upload some documentation using a regular copy paste feature. So this is just to highlight, it's very simple, it's very easy to get all of your month-end closing activities uploaded into the system. It's something you do once, of course, and we'll get a bit back to this. If there's any change in responsibilities or someone gets ill or something like that, it will have to be maintained. But to get going, to get started, it's very easy and it's very simple.
So what you're essentially saying to me, Morten, is that me being the responsible party for ensuring that the financial numbers are accurate, I can basically set up Impero once. I can assign a scheduling so that I make sure that these controls are being rolled out at a frequency that I desire to the right person or to the right group. So basically, if I want to avoid bottlenecks, I don't necessarily have to assign it to one individual. I can assign it to the entire AP department, for example, or I can assign the same control to multiple different entities and then get 5 different results back using just one control. And likewise, for the design of the control, I can very easily guide my colleagues that don't necessarily have the same risk and control appreciation through what they need to be doing very, very easily. So I'm now one of the control operators. I need to perform a control, and I'm now sitting here thinking, do I really have to log on to Impero, find the right program, find the right control, remember what the deadline is, and then document the control? Or how can I very easily be reminded that I need to perform this control so that we make sure that it's done in a timely manner?
Yeah, so there's actually a few ways to do this, and especially when we talk about month-end closing, I'd actually like to highlight both of these options here. So in Impero, we mainly communicate through an email. This is also, so for the example that I just did before, we will at the notification time, so on July 1st, we would send an email to the ones who are responsible for this task. And essentially all they'll have to do is that they would have to click on a link. So an email could look very much like this one here. So essentially, as a control performer, this is the first time that I'm being notified that they're actually that I have a pending task. Here it's just one control that has been assigned to me, but if I had any controls that I didn't do in the past, I'll also be able to see these. So this is very easy. It's very simple. I'll just click on the link and I'll go to the page of the control submission. However, when we are talking about the month-end closing part, typically it's not just a few controls. So we actually, and especially if we work within teams and stuff like that, there will be a lot of task controls that needs to be submitted. Right now I have access to a bunch of data here, but if we just ignore that, at least for a short while here, I can actually have access to Impero, but without having access to any data, I'll not be able to do anything. I can't send new controls, I can't create anything. All I can do is that I would have access to this little pane up here, which is labeled your pending actions. So essentially, whereas an email is a bit static, then what we will see up here is that we will just see a list of items that I'll have to do, and this can click on each of these. I'll be able to see the title, the description, how it's designed. All I'll have to do is click this submit button here, hit OK, and now it has been submitted up here. So it's very simple, it's very easy, and it saves a lot of time, because now I can see that I have 3 different actions left that I need to do something about.
Brilliant. And Morten, now one of my team members have called in sick. They're off for the day. They don't know when they're actually going to come back. I'm now sitting here. I'm worried. I don't understand what their tasks are for the upcoming days, and I really want to make sure that things are progressing smoothly. So how can Impero help us support that nothing is falling between two stools? Is there any way that Impero can help us here?
Yeah, so we have actually very recently enhanced our user management section here, actually just to cover this very specific topic. So now, and we won't touch upon roles and user roles in this webinar here, but all user administrators, all administrators can actually do this. So on, and I'll just use myself here as an example, but I could essentially do this for every single user in my organization. So what I'll essentially see here and what we'll focus on here is this little sub menu here on my left side. So now if I am sick or I have left for a different position or whatever it could be, there are 2 things that we mainly at least need to focus about. So if it's just a bit shorter term, then what we'll look at is this pending activities here. So these are all the activities that currently lies on my table. So these are the controls that you also saw before in my pending action list. So these are the 4 controls that are assigned to me and that currently is on my desk. So if I'm not here, and then I can actually click on these. We'll just focus on the assigned directly ones here. And all I'll essentially have to do is that I can mark all of these here, and I can hit replace user. And we can now I'll just send these to you here, Shanna, as an example. And I'll replace me with Shanna, and it's basically done in 1 click. So now you see that I only have 1 activity left. It's one I've been assigned to through a group. This is a one-off. So next month I'll receive the exact same control again, because we only edited the ones that has already been sent. We only changed the responsibility in controls that has already been made available. So if we need to do a more permanent change, then we need to go up here to the direct control assignments. What I see here is essentially a list of all the items where Morten Christensen is actually either responsible or a reviewer. In this example here, I'm responsible in all of these. But it could be that, well, for AP 5 and these 2 here for 8, it could probably be for 2 different companies. And for AP 10, let's just say that we need to actually remove me. So there are 2 options. I can hit remove assignment. That will just remove me from these controls here. So this could be if there's a company that's no longer in scope or whatever it could be, then it's fairly easy to just sort out up here on top and say, well, everything that's been tagged with this specific company, I'd like to actually just remove all assignments from this, and then nothing would essentially ever be sent again. A more day-to-day, or sorry, a more from period to period item that we see is this replace user. So now for these 4 different controls here, I'd like to change the responsibility. I'll just use Shanna again here as an example. And now we have successfully done the swap. Now I only did it for a subset, but you can of course just mark all, hit replace user, and replace all of them. So again, very simple, very easy to maintain, and very easy to use.
Brilliant. So now we've been talking about setting up an easy overview. We understand that these controls are being pushed out to the responsible parties in the given frequency. I understand that if one of my colleagues are calling in sick, I can easily bundle up the controls that they're responsible for and reassigning them to a different colleague, either in a short-term period or on a permanent basis in case they've found other a different job, for example, or they've swapped internally within the organization. So that's all good and fine, but I'm now sitting here. I have to report to management whether these controls have in fact been operated and whether that's been done timely. So how can I get an easy overview to make sure that these controls are in fact operated? Or how can I get an understanding whether I have some lazy colleagues who doesn't understand the importance of performing these tasks and controls?
Yeah, so that's a bit related to our report section. So I'll dive into this one here now. Just for the sake of this, I've done a pre-populated one, but I'll just walk you through it. So essentially, what we see up here is that we have this this calendar view that we can do. So now we are talking about a period. So now what I'm focusing on in this report here is all the data that's related to June. That's one way to do it. It could also be that we actually just use the due dates for this, but let's just focus on June for now. So what we see here is that there are 13 activities being controls in this example here. We have completed 10 of them. None of them are overdue yet, and none of them are in this to be sent, which I'll get a bit back to in just a minute. And then we calculate like an on-time rate of, well, in this case 100%, because, well, we are 100% on time. So that's just a very brief overview. We can dive a bit more into to the details. So first off, we can do it in this chart that we have here. So here we will be able to essentially look at one item at a time. So in this case here, we are looking at, well, what process is this about? So we have something within AP, AR, CM, and FA. Again, this is very customizable depending on what overview the clients actually need, and as you mentioned, also depending on, well, on what level are we actually reporting. It's very easy to do these adjustments. So it could be that, well, I don't want to see the process. I actually want to see, well, on each of the controls that we have actually sent, which of these are we actually missing. It could be, well, who's actually responsible. I think there will be a lot of me here and a little bit of you, Shannon. We can see who have actually submitted their control. That would be me, and who we are waiting on. Not mentioning any names, but that would be you in this case here, Shannon. And so we can toggle back and forth, and we can essentially, it's the same data that we are looking at, but we can structure it a bit differently depending on which overview we're actually interested in. When we're talking about charts, we can only look at one item at a time. So if I just scroll down here a little bit, I'll see this little table that we have here, and this is actually the exact same data that we are looking at. It's just structured a bit different. It works a little bit like a pivot table in Excel, for those of you who are familiar with that. But what we see here is essentially that we have created a structure that's well structured in process, control, and responsible. So if I go into my cash management process here, for instance, I'll be able to see, well, we did send 4 different controls from for this period here. And then I maybe want to dive into one of these and see, well, who was actually responsible. It was Shannon. We can see that it's currently still pending. And each of these numbers that you see here, I can actually click on these. It works a bit like what you just saw before in the user management section. We're just not focusing, at least not necessarily on one user. So I can actually click on this number 3 here. I'll be guided to our activity list here, and I can essentially find the ones that we need. So I can take these 3 here for Shannon. These could have been split between various of users, and then I can reassign it to a different user. Or I could even say, well, I need to send a manual reminder to Shannon to make sure that she actually do this control here. So it's it's very flexible and it's very easy to actually set up. Now we are looking at, well, the current period, but we can actually also look a bit into to the future. This will be the to be sent area here. So if we just up here, and I'll just use August as an example, then we can see that, well, that with the current setup, I'll just use August again here. Sorry, that with the current setup that we have, I excluded all the future items, but now we see we can actually see them. And so with the setup that we have, then, well, for August we will have 15 controls available, and I can again, if I wanted to actually see this based on who is responsible, I can see that, well, how is the workload for my team? How is it? Do we have any bottlenecks? And I see that there are 4 being sent to Shanna, and there's 11 being sent to me. Should we distribute some of these responsible to change that from me to Shanna? So it's very easy to get this overview, both when we look back in time and we want to highlight something around how we've documented our items, but also when we want to look into the future and we want to see, well, we basically want to plan ahead and see, well, how does this look after the summer holiday, for instance. That was a bit of a long answer for your questions.
But basically what you're telling me is that I can get a nice simple overview to understand whether these controls have in fact been performed in a timely manner. Do I really have to go into Impero and extract this report every time, or is there any simple way that I can get access to this overview?
So you can say that, well, what we do here is, well, it's a bit on request. So now I'm in Impero, I can run the report, I can change all these different parameters. But what I can actually also do, and that might be a bit more for team leads, for management, I can actually create what we call a push report. So essentially, you can have someone subscribe on a report, you could say. So I can define, we call it a push report. I can say, well, every month on the 15th, I'd like to send this specific report here to this user that could be me. So what that would actually mean is that, well, every month on the 15th, I'll receive an email that states, well, we have there's 15 controls. We have done 10 of them. 3 are overdue and 2 are pending. And I can click on a link. I'll go to well, in this case, I'll go to our June overview here, and I'll be basically be granted with an overview that looks just like this one here.
Brilliant. So essentially, we can set up the Impero platform to make sure that these tasks and controls are being pushed out in a frequency that we want to the assignees that we want. And I can sit here and I can comfortably follow up and make sure that these tasks are being performed. Or I can easily go in, I can reassign, or I can poke and send gentle reminders to the lazy employees to make sure that these controls are in fact being performed.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was just Shannon, we actually didn't mention this before, but we actually have one other way that that I'd like to just show, because now we have talked about controls like, well, one task equals one control. So I just think we could very briefly just show what could it actually look like if we have multiple tasks that needs to be documented in one control. I actually did left out that example before, but I'll just very briefly like to show. So essentially, it works very much like the other controls that we have seen. It's just structured a little bit different. So essentially, here I see a list of things that I need to do and to document. And again, this could be available for one user, or it could be, as in here, in a group. So what I can actually do is that I can take these one by one here and say, well, were there any issues? No. I could, as I mentioned before, actually use my snipping tool here and say, well, this here is actually my documentation. I can click here and click Control V to paste this in. Then I can verify and move on to the next line, and essentially walk through all of the different items that I need to do in my month-end closing process. And I can, of course, I don't have to take them one by one. I could also do it like this. It's just a little bit of a different way of actually working with Impero, but just to say that we can actually also do where we have these multiple tasks here. Now there are 16 in this case here, and so it doesn't have to be like this one by one as what we saw before. Sorry for interrupting, Shannon.
So we can basically bundle up the controls, so we don't have to receive an email with 5 different links to 5 different controls. We can bundle them, and we can easily go in and tick off that we've performed the controls, upload the relevant documentation, and then submit the control, and then we're done with our tasks and controls for the month.
Exactly. So especially for those of you who have these long spreadsheets that you're currently working in, and there are multiple people addressing these items, well, we can actually take this spreadsheet, we can send it out to relevant responsibles. They'll fill in their data, and then we, in our datasheet report, as the one you see here, we would essentially merge it back together, and I'll be able to walk through these here and again see, well, okay, for this specific salary calculation here is the documentation, and for this wage transfer here's the documentation for this specific period of time.
So I can even go in and I can do a bit of a sample testing if I want to make sure that my colleagues have in fact performed the reconciliations or uploaded the right control documentation, and that it wasn't just a picture of their niece or nephew or a cute little dog. So that's an easy way to also verify that what is being performed has actually been performed as intended. So now it's the time of the year where the auditors are visiting us, and I'm stressing out because I know they're going to ask for a bunch of documentation. How can Impero easily help us to facilitate that process and make sure that the auditors are getting the documentation that they need?
Yeah, so how that actually works in Impero is that, well, we now we haven't talked at all about access rights, but for instance, if I want my auditors to have access to this that we've talked about today, financial control program here, what they need is, and I'll just go down here, they would actually need like a view access. So what that essentially means is that, well, now they will they can change anything. Of course, they can't really do anything, but they will have they will grant access to all of the answers. So they will go within here, and then they will go into the activity list. And of course, we don't want to have all these overdue items here, so I'll just remove these. But essentially here you can search out on every single parameter that you're actually interested in. So if it's a specific control that you would like to see, then you can actually search out that one. So if I, for instance, want to see this AP8 review of overdue creditors, then I can search on this, and I have 8 results. I have them for different companies in this example here, so for 100, 500, 400, and so on, and I could have them for various periods. Now all of these here are for April, but it could be that, well, I actually want them for company 100. So here is my the control that I'm interested in. I can go in and see how it's actually designed, and I can export this, and I can do this with the control and the attachment, or I could say, well, I only want the control. But they will typically, of course, want the control and the provided documentation, and then they can download it directly from here. So essentially, they can define whatever they actually need. They can search it out, and they can download it to their own computers.
Brilliant. So basically, we have a complete audit trail of everything that we've done in the past. We've got a timestamp, we've got our documentation centrally stored, and we can basically just let the auditors in, and they can do their thing. That's yes. Perfect. So at today's webinar, we have been talking about how we can set up a process and control environment that's underpinned by this automated workflow. So we make sure that our colleagues are easily prompted whenever they have to do a task. We can follow up with these easy overviews of reports to make sure that controls have in fact been performed, and if not, we can easily reassign it, or we can send gentle reminders to make sure that they are then being performed. We also talked a bit about having the foresight, being a bit forward-looking, and making sure that we're not running into future bottlenecks. We're making sure that we're smoothing out our tasks and controls throughout the period end between the involved employees. So that's some of the things that we would normally be seeing companies struggling with, making sure that the employees understand their roles and responsibilities, that they make sure to perform the tasks in a timely manner, and also we make sure that we quickly swap the tasks around if needed, and that we get this nice overview to make sure to follow up that these controls have in fact been performed. And then in the end, we make sure that we can always find the documentation that's been uploaded so that we can use it for our own use or for the auditor's use. We only have 2 minutes left now. We have gotten quite a few questions. We'll see if we can answer a couple of them now, and then we'll get back to you on email if we don't answer all of them. So can I have you, Morten, just quickly scrolling through the questions and see if there's any common denominators that we can answer?
Yeah, so let's just check here. We actually have a few about these different user groups, how they are set up. I think I will just address that very quickly. So let's just see here. Again, I'll dive into the user management section, and then we actually have, and we didn't talk about that before, we actually have a user group section here. So now we talked a bit about the accounting one we did before, and it's actually fairly easy to create new ones if you need it. So let's just very quickly walk through that. So actually a quite new and very smart feature that we have here in Impero is that let's just say that, well, we have this APE team here. But what we can actually do is that we can set the access rights on a user group level. So you actually don't have to centralize from a management perspective, being the ones that needs to update all these different user groups. So you can have an AP team, and I can say that, well, Shanna, she is actually the one who would be administrating this user group here. And then in the next section here, I would select that, well, then Jacob, Shanna, and I, Pernille here, we are the members of the user group, and then I can create that. But that means that, well, essentially now, of course, all the user administrators, but otherwise Shanna will be the one in charge of updating this user group here. And yeah, I think we're running a bit out of time, as you also mentioned, Shannon, but we will get back and cover all of these questions here afterwards. I'll just highlight it here, and then I'll give it back to you, Shannon.
Brilliant. So as Morten is saying, we'll make sure to get back to all of you with the questions that haven't been answered. Today was a high-level introduction to the platform and how it can support you in strengthening your month-end closing process. What we didn't showcase today was the risk module and how that can basically help you strengthen your processes and your control environment. So for those of you who are interested, we have already recorded a webinar some weeks ago where we have a deep dive into the risk module. You can find that on our website. And likewise, next week on Thursday, the 24th of July at 10 a.m. Danish time, we will be hosting a new webinar which will give you a deep dive into the control management module. So we hope that today's session was insightful and helpful for you, and we are looking forward to welcoming you to our next webinars. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, if you would like to get a detailed demo, please feel free to reach out to Morten and myself on our emails, which is on the screen right now. But yeah, thank you everyone for your time today, and please feel free to reach out.